Good afternoon. The board meeting of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and its component units is now called to order. Due to the challenges related to the ongoing COVID public health crisis, in-person attendance at today's meeting will be limited to commissioners and Port Authority staff required to conduct the meetings and credentialed members of the media subject to capacity issues. For all others, the meeting is being held virtually via teleconference with the proceedings live streamed from the Port Authority website. On November 30th, the Security Committee met in executive session. On December 6th, the Committees on Capital Planning, Execution and Asset Management and Operations met jointly in executive session. Earlier today, the Committees on Capital Planning, Execution and Asset Management met in public. The Committees on Finance and Audit met jointly in executive, and the Committees on Finance and Operations met jointly in executive session. Their reports will be filed with the official minutes in today's board meeting. The Commissioners also met in executive early today to discuss matters involving ongoing negotiations for the review of contracts or proposals, matters related to the purchase, sale, or lease of real property where disclosure would affect the value thereof or the public interest, and matters related to personnel or personnel procedures. Let's start this meeting, which is the final meeting of the year, and this will be the last time we'll all be collectively here till February. But I think it's important we start on a very special note. We're recognizing and giving a tribute to Commissioner Ray Pacino, who retired from the board in September and has joined us remotely. I saw Ray's picture up there. Ray, how we doing?
Is he on mute? Okay.
I'm doing well. Good afternoon, Chairman.
How we doing, Ray? Good seeing you again, although I did see you the other day, and I'm going to repeat a couple of things, Ray. I've known Ray, who was the dean he served 20 years on this board. 20 years. You think about that. 20% of the entire existence of the Port Authority was served by this gentleman, who we call Mr. Labor in New Jersey. And let me say that when I started as a young whippersnapper in the Assembly back in the 96, Ray was the person everybody consulted when you had to talk about any big projects or any labor agreement. And I will tell you, when you walked into the Assembly or the Senate caucuses, and if Ray was there, everybody would be really quiet. He was like E.F. Hutton. They would listen. When I got to the board 4.5 years ago, and they handed me the gavel and said, go to it, you know, I'm not going to say it was the easiest transition. And I remember Ray literally tugging at my sleeve and said, you can handle this, you can do it. You've got some really good support. And Ray, perhaps more than anybody else, gave me a perspective of what the Port Authority is, the deep commitment of the employees, what labor meant and how they had to be represented. And he brought some really interesting dynamics and interesting perspectives that, frankly, I had not been exposed to or understood or perhaps even shared in my earlier life. Ray, from a personal standpoint, you have made me a better board member. You have made this entire board significantly smarter, wiser. You're the individual who, when things were getting crazy, whether it's Hurricane Sandy or Ida or Hugo or Andrew, whatever you were always calm in that. And I always loved that calm resiliency and steely resolve that you had, Ray. Really cool aspect that I wish more of us had. I can tell you that, Ray has served with great distinction on this board. He's been here through good times, tough times. He has charted the future of the Port Authority's vision for the next century more than anybody else that I know from a board's perspective. And that'll be sorely missed. I will tell you this, Ray, and I got the phone call from Ray, I'll never forget, it was September 10th, and he calls me up, he says, Kevin, I'm done. I said, what do you mean? And I just kind of knew he says, look, 20 years. You got to know when to say when in this business. And Ray, I really appreciated your understanding that you just wanted to do your service and allow others to come on. And by that, is a really shining example of what I think other public officials should do. And frankly, I said after 20 years, I was done in the legislature. It's a good example to just know when to say when. So your service has been beyond, beyond reproach. And in terms of beyond, I don't think we can compare you to any other commissioner that I'm sure there's others, Steve Cohen may, or others who have some history here, may harken back to some of the other days in the 70s or 80s or 90s of folks who have served for such a length of time without interruption with great distinction. So Ray, I can't thank you enough, and I know Commissioner McCabe, who you have shared history with, might want to say a few words, and others feel free at this time to make Ray blush.
Chairman, indeed I do, and thank you. And Commissioner, congratulations. I've worked with you outside of the four walls of the Port Authority, recognizing you've been here for 20 years. For those who don't know, while he was also here for 20 years, he also served the Highway Authority, the Turnpike Authority, for over a decade as well, and I may be underselling him on that. And that doesn't happen by accident because it speaks to who he is. I can tell you as a young whippersnapper coming up as well, that when when you're in the presence of Ray Pacino, you listened. And with that, you learned. And, he's an iconic figure in organized labor and on so many other different levels as well. And he is so respected. He is dignified. And I think that the reason it is, in watching him for over 20 plus years and working with him in different capacities, working in other union organizations, or just working with him and his team on so many different endeavors, on so many different paths through over the last couple of years, last 20 plus years, is the one thing that you could always say about Ray Pacino, and I've always saw this, and people would agree, is his core never wavered. That whatever he would do would always be in the best interest of his members, the residents that he was, the citizens of New Jersey, those who lived in the region, representing as a commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. He's held so many different titles, whether it be at the international level within his union, political, governmental, you name it. There isn't too much that he hasn't done. But it always goes back to this, and if you were to sit down and talk to him about how he came up in the union movement, his experience, his achievements, which he doesn't really speak to much, it's always about, and if you talk to him as a labor leader, and I think this is who he is, his core never wavered, that it was about the members. It was about the individual that he was trying to help to wake up today in a better position than they did yesterday. And to personally, Commissioner, I want to thank you for all the opportunities and experiences that I've had with you over the last 25 years on so many different levels. And I will say this again, I don't think I'm understating, and I think the chairman would agree, he's an iconic figure in so many different levels in New Jersey. And it's a loss for the port, but I know you're going to be around New Jersey, and we will all be better served for that. So, sir, thank you and congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else want to be heard? Commissioner Eve?
Yes. Most of the commissioners don't know this, but Commissioner Pacino knows this. I had the honor of meeting Ray 8.5 years ago, very early on with respect to my day job. And I am often a woman of many words, but let me just echo what Commissioner McCabe said about your core never wavering. What you see is what you get. Tough negotiator, but a person of principle, commitment, unwavering dedication to his members, but also unwavering dedication to getting to a solution where everybody could walk away from the table feeling like they were a winner, and legitimately so. I learned so much from you, Ray, particularly early on when I had a chance, oversaw government affairs for my corporation in New Jersey. I was a student at your feet. I still never forgot so many wonderful words of wisdom that you shared with me 8+ years ago that remain with me today. And then 4 years later, when I had the honor of becoming a member of the Port Authority, having yet another opportunity to engage with you. I too have benefited from your tutelage, but just how you have chosen to live your life and represent those you represent. You are a model for us all. I'm not sad because I know that you're going to continue to do great things and hopefully take a little bit more time to relax and enjoy life. And so it is not goodbye, young man. It is till we see you again soon. But most importantly, thank you for your service. God bless.
Thank you, Commissioner Eve. Commissioner LaBarbera.
Yeah. Hey, hello, Ray. There's not much more that I could say, really, than that has already been said, other than I hope to see you in Florida in March for our annual conference. Hope you're still coming to that. And the other thing is, look, everything that's been said is absolutely true. You have been a true friend, but we share, Ray and I share something as being part of the labor movement. We call each other brother, and you are my brother, and that's a special thing. We're in the same movement. And everything that's been said today, for those of you that may not know Ray Pacino, is 100% on. I couldn't agree more. So, Ray, I'm sure I'll be talking to you, but I wanted to just take this opportunity to be heard and to wish you the very best. And I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Richardson.
Commissioner Pacino, our paths crossed for a short time, but I will tell you I am wishing you the very best in this new phase of your life adventure. And judging from our encounter, as brief as it was, the stories and the learning will continue. So I'm wishing you the very best, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else wish to be heard? All right, Ray, before we hear from you, we're going to just show you something. We're going to give you this plaque, but now that Gary opened up the possibility of seeing you in March, which we'll probably present this to you in March, Florida, where are we going?
We're gonna be down the Diplomat in Florida.
Excellent.
You're welcome to come.
Yes.
Yeah,
Everyone, we're all going. No, we're all
I will
going.
be more than happy to extend an invitation to the board, and all of you could be given an opportunity to speak and address several hundred labor.
So, Ray, I hope you can see it, Ray. This is the plaque that the executive director, the vice chair, all the commissioners wanted to give you. And it is symbolic, Ray. It doesn't touch or really symbolize in terms of like the magnitude of your service. Like you think about, he was here in '02, and the rebuild of this building and this campsite was spending up to $250 million a month, and labor issues galore. He had 25,000 employees running in and out. Ray, you were part of that calmness, working with Steve Plate and a bunch of others. And I don't think any of us could understand the stress points and the overwhelming charge that you and the commissioners had. You've lived it, Ray, and I want to thank you for all that you've done. So on behalf of the board, thank you, thank you, thank you. You've been a model for all of us, Ray. We love you.
Thank you, Chairman O'Toole, and all the commissioners for those kind words. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the honor to work alongside of you in the service of this great organization and what it does as an economic mecca in this New York, New Jersey region, and indeed the world. And of course, I want to say thank you to not only my fellow commissioners, but thank you to all the skilled and dedicated staff of the Port Authority that I have found over the years to be just awesome. Keep it up and keep it going. You do a great job. And Director Cotton, you as well. You and Kevin are a great 1-2 punch as far as this agency is concerned, and you both have made a hell of a difference along with the rest of the commissioners in this authority. Those 20 years have gone by very quickly, but of course, life goes by quickly when you stop and think about it. But I love my time serving as commissioner, and I will miss working on the planning and executing in all the areas of the Port Authority that the Port Authority serves, in aviation, rail, surface transportation, ports. Indeed, I will miss it all for sure. But I don't consider this a goodbye. However, since I will continue to advocate for the building, maintaining, and modernization of our infrastructure throughout our region, and proudly want to do that to create jobs and opportunity, not only for the people I represent, the workers in New York and New Jersey, but also for the citizens in New Jersey who get to use all the facilities that we manage and direct in our roles as commissioners. I want to thank you for the privilege to work with you. I wish you and your families a very happy holiday, and I am sure I'm going to be seeing you in the new year as we continue this important work. And hopefully, maybe see you in the Diplomat in Florida, who knows? Gary, brother Gary, always a pleasure. Brother McCabe as well. Again, farewell, but not goodbye. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. That's tough to move on from that.
Yeah.
You just see history. Ray is just such an amazing gentleman. Today, we move on to recognize the actions of two other amazing folks, two Port Authority police officers who administered life-saving measures in assisting a customer in medical distress on the path. Our superintendent, Ed Sentnar, will provide some of the details. Ed, you there? Superintendent? Is his mic on?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
You have
Good afternoon, Chairman, Director, Commissioners. Thank you again for acknowledging some of the hard work of the men and women of the Port Authority Police Department. Today we're acknowledging two officers from the path. At 12:30 p.m. on September 21st, police officers Nicholas Dosher III and Keith O'Connell from the Path Command responded to Grove Street Station on a report of an unconscious male on board of a northbound train. The aided happened to be a Port Authority employee who was in cardiac arrest. Upon arrival, the aided was found lying on the ground and unresponsive, while witnesses to the event had already began initiating CPR. The officers immediately requested EMS and resumed medical care, which consisted of CPR, oxygen, and ultimately the activation of an AED device. The defibrillator indicated that indicated a need for a shock, and one was safely administered by the device. Officers Dosher and O'Connell continued CPR until the arrival of EMS, who administered 2 additional shocks before the aide was finally stabilized. He was then transported by EMS to Jersey City Medical Center for further care. The actions of both officers serve as a testament to the excellent training afforded to our police officers during their training at the Port Authority Police Academy. All this cumulative training and knowledge is carried in a police officer's toolbox, hoping they never need these tools, but nonetheless are always prepared to use them. There is no doubt that the swift actions, collaborative efforts, and professionalism displayed by these officers contributed to this gentleman's life being saved. Their dedication to the service of others and their profession are being recognized today as they are in accordance with the highest standards and traditions of the Port Authority Police Department. It is my honor and pleasure, sir, to present you Police Officer Keith O'Connell and Police Officer Nicholas Dosher, and Chief Gonzalez will present the certificate on behalf of the board, the chairman and executive director, acknowledging their job well done.
Are you going to read the certification? Ed, or no?
I'm sorry, sir.
Are you going to read it for the officers, or you're just going to present it?
We just presented it, sir. Basically, the certificate is on behalf of the board, the chairman and the executive director, acknowledging what I just read, their actions in the life-saving effort.
Thank you very much, and I'm hoping soon. I think one of the things we enjoy is having the executive director and vice chair and commissioners kind of shake hands when possible, fist bump when possible, and congratulate the men and women who keep us safe. And I'm hoping sooner than later, in person, we can have that. But obviously now is not that time. We were hoping this was going to be the time, Rick, but it's obviously a little bump on the road. But thank you, and thank those 2 officers, and a round of applause. Thank you, Vice Chair. Alrighty, moving ahead, we now turn to our executive director for the last of 2021's executive director reports, which I'm sure, Rick, you are thrilled about.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is the last board meeting, as you know, of 2021, and it was a terribly difficult year. And I do submit this report as a brief year in review, but I have to start it out by commenting on the way the employees of the agency rose to the extraordinary challenges of the COVID-19 crisis. Our primary focus was on the health and safety both of our employees and of our customers. And I can report, as we conclude this centennial year, that the agency throughout the year operated at the highest standard possible. But it is the employees of the agency that deserve a thank you. Thank you to the represented employees, 2/3 of the agency. Thank you to the labor union leaders who worked with us in preserving health and safety for our employees and for our customers. Thank you to our non-represented employees. Thank you to the entire Port Authority Police Department. Thank you to our non-represented employees, and thank you to the senior leaders of the agency. Without all of your efforts, this agency would not have been able to deliver on its public responsibilities. But the history of the Port Authority is in fact marked by its ability to rise above challenges, to build great infrastructure, and to move people and goods. Mr. Chairman, you frequently commented on this history. In 2021, the agency's employees once again rose to an unprecedented challenge, in this case, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Let me begin in terms of thinking about the year to comment just very briefly on what the year saw in terms of our traffic and passenger volumes. On the bright side, at our tunnels and bridges, overall vehicular traffic has now essentially recovered to pre-COVID 2019 levels. In addition, our port cargo volumes continue to set records. 2021 saw 11 straight months of record volumes, and we're projecting December to be a 12th. But what's more, the Port Authority handled these record volumes without the congestion experienced at other ports. Average wait times for vessels to unload at the seaport remained at less than 2 days for the entire year, with rarely more than 1 or 2 ships at anchorage. Recovery at aviation and PATH, looked at across the year, was much slower. From 70% down in January of 21, airport passenger volumes have in fact recovered gradually but steadily. But they are still on average down 25% from pre-pandemic levels. But I have to note a spike at Thanksgiving brought passenger volumes up to 85% of 2019 volumes. PATH's weekday ridership increased during the year steadily, but it has flattened out at approximately 50% of pre-pandemic levels. But despite the challenges of COVID, despite the impact of our revenues falling $3 billion, or losing $3 billion of revenues in a 24-month period, and despite our cutback of capital spending by 1/3 in both 2020 and 2021, the agency has been able to deliver not merely first-rate operations, but also a year of accomplishments. Let me touch briefly on them, really on the highlights. In 2021, at LaGuardia Airport, construction of a whole new LaGuardia made dramatic progress. It is the first new airport on the East Coast in more than 25 years. 60% of the new airport is already open to the public. It has made sufficient progress, or such progress, that this project is now poised for a series of openings next year of the final elements of the construction project. The first new airport on the East Coast in more than 25 years, built through this pandemic crisis, and it was built while the airport continued operating throughout the construction period. Newark Liberty. In 2021, construction progressed on the brand new state-of-the-art flagship Terminal A at Newark. It is now set for the opening of its first gates next year, and construction also progressed dramatically on the airport's new parking garage and consolidated car rental facility. The Newark AirTrain project moved forward and received final federal approval in August of this year from the FAA. The project shortlisted 4 industry-leading construction teams to compete for the construction project, and that competition is now well underway. At JFK, in 2021, we announced 3 major terminal redevelopment deals at JFK, bringing the agency closer to achieving the vision for a unified 21st century international gateway. Let me just recall, in April, the board approved an agreement with Delta and JFK IAT to renovate and expand Terminal 4. In August, the board approved a new Terminal 6. On the board's agenda today is approval of new Terminal 1. And yesterday, the agency broke ground on the Terminal 4 project. Not words, but actions. Real progress. Turning to the airport's functioning, in 2021, aviation across the board achieved much-needed year-over-year improvements in customer experience ratings at each of our 3 major airports. In the leading airport passenger survey, in the second quarter of 2021, all 3 airports scored at least a 4.0 rating on a 5-point scale, which is a first for the agency. We plan to build on that achievement in 2022 and beyond. At our Bridges and Tunnels Division, and who operate our terminals as well, in January 2021, the agency announced a well-received community-backed plan for a new state-of-the-art Midtown bus terminal. In June, based on extensive submissions from the Port Authority, the federal government issued its formal approval for the Port Authority to begin the environmental review of the Midtown bus terminal replacement project. And then in the summer, the federal government held 4 public virtual sessions for public comment, and the required federal environmental review is now underway. In June, the board approved $80 million in funding to move the replacement project forward, and that is what we are doing. At the George Washington Bridge, in March of this year, and a big step in the bridge's $2 billion program to restore the George, the replacement of all 296 suspender ropes was completed on the north side of the George Washington Bridge, an extraordinary construction project. In May, all electronic tolling gantries were installed at the Palisades entrance to the GWB, and in November, those gantries were installed at the Lincoln Tunnel. A completion of all electronic tolling will now occur both at the Lincoln and the GWB by the end of next year. At the World Trade Center campus, both the new Ronald Perlman Performing Arts Center and the St. Nicholas Orthodox Greek Church made dramatic progress in 2021. Visitors can now see the beautiful stone facades on both buildings, and both will now complete construction next year, with the church scheduled to open in the spring of next year and the first performance at the Performing Arts Center to start in 15 months once rehearsals and fine-tuning of the complex stages have been completed. In June, the development rights for the World Trade Center Site 5 for a mixed-use residential tower were awarded. New York's Economic Development Agency, Empire State Development, has now begun its process, which includes a full-scale public comment period to consider needed regulatory approvals for this project to move forward. With respect to PATH, we have moved forward on planned capacity interest on the capacity increases on the PATH system in 2021 by awarding construction contracts, the final one in March 2021, for the PATH 9-car station modification program. Throughout the year, construction progressed dramatically at all 5 stations, with the first one, Journal Square, completing in October. All stations will be 9-car ready next year. 2021 saw a continued focus on-time performance. PATH implemented multiple preventive maintenance programs, and we look forward to those having a positive impact. In partnership with the PAPD, PATH continues and has continued to enforce mask-wearing compliance in all stations and trains, and in 2021, PATH distributed over 340,000 masks to passengers. The PAPD made over 35,000 contacts regarding mask wearing in PATH stations and on PATH trains. At the seaport, in 2021, The seaport handled the highest annual cargo ever at the seaport, setting new monthly records, as I mentioned at the beginning of the report. At the same time, throughout 2021, the port maintained an extraordinarily positive record in keeping the average wait time for ships to unload of less than 2 days, dramatically lower than peer ports across the country. With respect to the agency-wide effort that we have made to act decisively to combat racism, in February of 2021, the agency released a report outlining 25 recommendations to improve race dynamics at the agency. In the course of 2021, 18 initiatives have been implemented, and all remaining 7 initiatives are on their way to be completed early next year. In other actions with respect to diversity inclusion, we took strong measures to expand our 30% target for MWBE from construction contracts to all contracts for goods and services at the agency. And in September, the board took the further action to expand our MWBE commitment by approving a new small contracts program that will strengthen our efforts even more when it comes to small businesses and small contracts. And just this month, the agency set an MWBE record. The LaGuardia Development Program announced that it had hit an extraordinary milestone of more than $2 billion in contracts awarded to certified MWBEs, and nearly $800 million in contract awards went to local Queens-based businesses. With respect to sustainability, the board took a historic and aggressive action in October 21 to embrace the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050 with a 50% reduction by 2030. The Port Authority thereby became the first U.S. transportation agency to embrace the net zero commitment by 2050. And multiple initiatives have been identified, and implementation has begun to achieve the new 2030 target. Mr. Chairman, all in all, the agency in 2021 rose to the challenge of the pandemic, and the agency upheld its tradition of great accomplishment, even in the face of tremendous crisis. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Executive Director. Let me just add to a couple of things. Just want to do an impromptu year end. It's kind of like stunning, Rick, as you sit there and go by and what happened in the last year, and it almost merges what happened in 2020, because it has been, a waterfall of activity since, February, March of 2020, when this pandemic hit, and hit us hard. And at first, like I said, there's no playbook, and we managed to get through 2020, and we lost the $1.7 billion. We're going to lose the $3 billion you talk about in 24 months. But we have stood up, as the Port Authority always has and always will, for 100 years, Rick. So let me just take you through a little bit. When you look back, this board has changed dramatically this year. We've got 4 new commissioners. Welcome back, Commissioner Cohen, whose experience is amazing, and you add great value and depth to us. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Commissioner Richardson, your interest and a lot of questions, really, I love it. You bring great value from your background, and you are an asset that we needed years ago. Much appreciated. And Commissioner Menendez, new addition. You found your voice quickly here. Your finance background is really helpful to me. Your follow-up and your diligence, extraordinary. And Commissioner Martinotti, who I know you're listening out there, you're concerned about cyber and security. Really an amazing asset that, again, we should have had some time ago, and we appreciate your energy and your interest. And my friend, Commissioner McCabe, you're not really new, but I consider you. By the way, with Ray leaving, I'm now the senior member of New Jersey, and you are now the second most senior, which is kind of, Ray talks about time moving fast. It moves fast. It's been 4.5 years now we've been doing this. And you come to understand what crisis is because we've lived it. And this year, as you look down the centennial way, what has accomplished in the last year, you kind of reduce it, what's happened in the last 2 years. Great tragedy, great calamity, great progress, sadness, growth and promise. And that's what we're really looking at. When we look at what our predecessors have done for 99 years coming into this year, when they first started in 1921, they didn't have a single asset. And look where we are now. Look what we have done. And Rick, you started the employees. That's what this agency has always been. It is the success and the hard work on the sweat and tears and literally on the backs of those employees that started in 1921 and have moved on to this day. And when you see people who have worked here for 3 and 4 decades and Huntley for 36 years, and we talk about Lillian 43 years, and others who have done literally 30 and 40 years, a third of the time during the Port Authority, it is because of your commitment, folks, that we are moving on and we are succeeding. And the reputation of Port Authority in terms of its excellency and resiliency and strength is going to carry on. And it's difficult. And we talk about some personal loss. You know, we lost 13 employees, 3 COVID-related in some manner, and the others just, we lost them because someone decided it was their time. And there's a sadness to that. And I think we should recognize the 13. And if you just bear with me, to the families and the friends of our 13 colleagues and family members who we've lost, heartfelt condolences to you. Uday Mehta, Jesse Lampini, Scott Jacobs, Christopher Cocoon, Lee Morton, Eric Kahani, Scott Calandra, Richard Elzer Jose, Kevin Sanchez, Nicholas DeMarco, Kelly O'Donnell, Jonathan Samperini, and Brian Culver. We thank you and your families for what you've done and what you've left behind. You know, I had a conversation yesterday with a patrolman, Eric Fung, his wife gave birth last week, and he shared the story that his wife passed away during the birth. And I was asked to, which I think it's important we do, is we reach out to our employees who are in need. I spent some time talking to Eric. I said, tell me what happened. He said they went in, difficult birth, and his wife, Kimmy, passed away. And he had such a spirit about him. I said, well, tell me about your child. He said, my son is beautiful. Reminds me of his mother. And he said this story, and I hope he wants me to share it, that she wanted to name the son Storm. That's a name she really held dear. I think it may harken back to their Chinese roots or a family or some significance to that name. And he said he decided to name his son Liam. I said, why Liam? And he said, I just liked the name. I said, you know what Liam is? I said, Irish Gaelic, it means warrior and protector. I said, that's what your son's going to be for you and your family. And that's what the employees represent to us. You employees who we are looking at, you are our protectors. You are our warriors. And you carry us 100 years, and you're going to carry us another 100 years. We talk about the state of Port Authority in New York and New Jersey. It's a difficult, difficult place to run, manage, and work. And 2021 has been the most difficult year for all of us. But we have come out of this side better, stronger, more cohesive, more focused than anyone would have anticipated given the circumstances. And that is because of what our employees have given to us. And so I say to our employees, and this comes from the employees of past, the employees of present, and the employees of the future. Port Authority is going to live and thrive and exist, and it's going to allow this region to live, survive, and exist because of what you have committed, you've contributed, and what you will contribute. And on behalf of this board, future boards, we want to say thank you. In the spirit of the can-do, we get it done. We will continue to get it done. We will continue to put aside the acrimony and the political bickering of years past and speak with one voice. 4 years, we've had a very united board. Rick has been, and it starts with Rick. It starts with Rick, and we need to understand the most accomplished, professional, perfect, near perfect, public servant, business person I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen a lot. Demanding. This place would not be successful and run, would not be as safe, would not have these projects, would be JFK or Newark without Rick. He manages, once in a while micromanages. I said that for the staff, Janet. He's terrific, and we know that. And Port Authority's lucky to have him now, exactly when we need him. Rick, you've been more than a partner, buddy. You've been the engine. And you thank everybody else, but guess what? We got to thank you. Thank you very much for everything you've brought, everything you've sacrificed, Rick. You didn't have to be here. You should be playing golf, hanging out right now. We couldn't do it without you. And you're staying here. I don't care what you say. And I would ask that everybody give an applause to Rick. Now, our vice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our vice chair had to go, but I want to say to Jeff. Jeff is sometimes quiet, sometimes not, but Jeff adds such a dimension to this board. He adds such a financial, beyond the need for a thesaurus that Gary and I get weekly with him. He has such a command of the figures, whether it's bonding or whether it's just financing or credit ratings. He speaks a language that only he and Libby understand. But he brings such a depth to this place, and we are fortunate to have him as our vice chair. And to the commissioners, I say this, and you know, and I rely upon all of you. We each come from different backgrounds, and it's a miracle we get here, whether through politics or policy or just serendipity. We're here, and we all bring a different perspective. And we come from very different backgrounds and upbringings and experiences. And somehow, at this time, all of us together, it works. And I'm hoping this continues, because it does work, Gary, as we talked about today. At this time and age, this is all working. We've got to keep it going. It's too important stuff. So let me just say, and I'll close by, this is a tough one, but the future is bright for the Port Authority. You look at what we're going to be voting on today, largest private partnership, public partnership in the country, $9.5 billion. When we're done, we're going to spend $30 billion on 3 state-of-the-art airports. It's unheard of. We've never seen that before. When you see what we're doing at the port, and hats off to the port department, when you see LA and Long Beach and the delays and supply issues, not here, because the commissioners before us, Ray Pacino and the rest of them, the folks who sat here years ago, they made the proper planning choices in the investment in the port, whether it's the Bayonne Bridge, the dredging, the infrastructure, the roadways. That made it possible. And that's the kind of vision we have to bring for this future, for this next 100 years. So let's get going. The year is upon us for 2022. I think we got some challenges ahead of us. I think we as a board, and Rick, all of us should look at whether the structure we have organizationally works. Can we improve upon it? And one thing I want to look at some time, which we talked about in 19, I want to talk about the pay scale. You know, we have asked a lot of our top staff, middle staff, rank and file, and we're going to lose some, we are losing some. And we have to think about when the time is right and the finance is right, whether we have to do something about retaining the top staff here to keep this vision thing going. But that's for another time. I'm hoping it's next year. So that's my filibustering. I just felt I wanted to say something. It was to close this year out. And anybody else want to add to Rick's report or any comments or questions? Yes, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Rick. Obviously, the one person you left out is yourself. You've been an incredible chair, and that, I think, is agreed upon by all commissioners. The fact that I don't look at my colleagues as New York commissioners or New Jersey commissioners, but my colleagues, is a testament to how you've managed this board and working with Rick, and you really do work hand in hand. It's a great team. So I think that I just couldn't let, as much as I wanted just to let you have that filibustering moment, I couldn't let it go without saying, as also one of the 3 newer members of the board, just to echo one of your overarching comments, and we've been indoctrinated with this, and it's so true, is Commissioner and Eva and I were talking, it's been a long year. It's been a long year for the region. It's definitely been a long year for this agency. And when we're on this side looking out, you're looking at a championship caliber team who's played at a championship caliber level an entire year in difficult circumstances. I wish the public had this viewpoint, this vantage, so that way they could see what goes into making all the facilities that they use in their daily lives, what it goes into making them great. So because I sit here, I have to say it. It's an incredible organization, it's an incredible team. And for those that in the region that just don't see it, I hope you know that they're working hard every day for you. So thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity.
Anybody else? Alrighty, we're going to move ahead. Our next order of business is a presentation by the Chief Financial Officer, Libby McCarthy, who will review the proposed 2022 budget for consideration by the board following the Speaker's program. The budget was posted on the Port Authority's website through December 14th for public comment, and our CFO will provide an overview of the nature of comments as part of her presentation, and we'll defer the matter till after the public gets to speak. Libby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So I will just do what you just said. The proposed budget today has been out for public comment since November 18th. So the proposed budget totals $7.9 billion and is built off of the significant reductions made in the 2021 austerity budget due to the adverse impacts of COVID-19. This proposed budget is supported by the continuing activity recovery across our facilities, with increased revenue supporting the key spending categories that are listed here. While the agency is well on the road to recovery from the pandemic, the Port Authority's financial condition continues to be adversely impacted. Therefore, the proposed budget for 2022 is below amounts the agency had projected for 2022 pre-COVID. Also, although the Port Authority does anticipate receiving some additional federal funding for its airports from the infrastructure bill, this budget does not reflect such aid at this time. These next 2 slides show the impact of COVID-19 on the agency's activity volumes for the pre-COVID 2019 period all the way through and including our projection for 2022. Here you can see the activity volumes for Port Authority containers on the left and bridge and tunnel vehicular activity on the right. For reference, the yellow dotted line is 2019 activity levels and the solid blue line is the actual or projected amount. As you can see, the seaports were less impacted by COVID-19 and have been reporting record volumes this year as they continue to move essential goods. Port container volumes are projected to be 12% over 2019 levels in 2022. The bridges and tunnels are just recently back to 2019 activity levels and are expected to remain at or above those levels in 2022. This slide shows aviation passengers on the left and path riders on the right. As you can see, these business lines are experiencing a slower recovery in activity volumes. Aviation passengers are projected to continue to recover in 2022 with a full year at 90% of 2019 levels. PATH is projected to have a strong recovery in 2022 with riderships currently forecasted to reach 80% of 2019 levels. As a result of this activity recovery, 2022 gross operating revenues are projected to increase by $635 million versus the 2021 budget. While this amount reflects that strong revenue growth from the unprecedented declines in 20 and 21, these amounts are, when combined with the activity-related passenger facility charge revenues, still $400 million, or 6% below our pre-COVID 2022 projections. It is within this context of an ongoing recovery from COVID-19 that we set the proposed 2022 budget, which consists of operating expenses, annual capital spending, and debt service and deferred expenses, which I'll walk through now. The proposed 2022 operating expense budget totals $3.4 billion, and that reflects a core increase of $211 million, or 6.6%, versus the 2021 austerity budget. As a reminder, the 2021 budget reduced headcount by 626 positions and carried forward approximately $190 million of cost reductions implemented in 2020, in addition to further cost reductions needed to offset contractual or structural increases elsewhere. This proposed core budget holds headcount flat to the reduced 2021 levels and provides for inflation-based growth for labor and contracts. Non-discretionary contractual increases related to the 5-year rent reset for the land underlying our 3 major airports and New Jersey seaports, and targeted incremental spending to prudently restore resources to address increased activities volumes across our facilities, make incremental security investments, including additional cybersecurity protections, and invest in new projects and initiatives, including innovative technology demonstration projects, sustainability initiatives to advance the agency's new net zero commitments, and new revenue-generating and customer experience projects. The proposed 2022 operating expense budget also incorporates $41 million of non-core expenses that are completely reimbursable from third parties, such as federal reimbursements for employee COVID-19 testing and reimbursements for services requested by the New York State Department of Transportation, or expenses funded through the 2022 capital spending budget, but that under accounting standards are treated as operating expenses. Now moving on to capital, the proposed capital spending budget of $2.7 billion reflects an increase of $316 million, or 13%, versus the 2021 austerity budget. This budget phases in additional spending from the reduced spending levels in 2020 and 2021 that were necessary as a result of COVID-19 in a fiscally prudent manner. It's important to note that this budget amount is still 24% below what was the originally envisioned 2022 capital spending in the 2017 through 2026 capital plan. And finally, the proposed debt service budget, totaling $1.6 billion, reflects an increase of $22 million versus the 2021 budget, driven by the scheduled borrowing that funds the capital plan. Combined, the operating expenses, capital spending, and debt service budgets, debt service and deferred expense budgets total the $7.9 billion, which we are requesting authorization for today. And these amounts are funded by the sources that you can see here. As I mentioned, on November 18th, the proposed budget was presented to the Board of Commissioners at its meeting and published on the agency's corporate website and highlighted in a press release. With these presentations and publications, we requested that the public submit comments on the proposed budget. As of this morning, we have received a total of 16 comments, as shown here. The majority of the comments, or 13 in total, voiced opposition to the scheduled increases in bus tolls and air train fares. The planned air train fare cost of living adjustment-based increase of 25 cents and the scheduled increase in bus tolls were previously approved by the board in 2019 and are needed to support capital investments being made across our facilities. As such, no changes are recommended to the 2022 budget or the scheduled bus toll or airtrain fare increases. Two comments provided various general observations on the proposed 2022 budget, and one of these specifically requested additional information or clarification about the type of work that contract spotters that were requested by New York State Department of Transportation would be completing. These contract spotters will provide traffic mitigation services for the construction work that the DOT will be completing on the Van Wyck Expressway around JFK AirTrain infrastructure. These amounts are fully reimbursable to the Port Authority. Staff recommends no changes to the proposed 2022 budget as a result of these comments. And finally, one comment requested that the budget include a dedicated express bus lane leaving the Port Authority bus terminal to Interstate 95 in New Jersey. The comment has been referred to the Tunnel, Bridges, and Terminals Department for future regional traffic management and planning consideration, but no modifications are recommended to the 2022 budget as a result of this comment. In sum, we are requesting authorization today of the $7.9 billion 2022 budget, which consists of $3.4 billion for operating expenses, $2.7 billion for annual capital spending, and $1.8 billion for debt service and deferred expenses. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Libby. I know we have reviewed this budget a few times over the last few months.
We have.
Had great discussions and a lot of questions from both senior staff, Rick's staff, and the commissioners. And is there anybody here that has any other questions for Libby before we allow this to be moved to the public vote? Rick, you want to add anything to what was said, or?
No, I think Libby covered it very well.
Great. Libby, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Job well done, Libby.
Thank you.
Alrighty, at this time, we're going to take a step back for a moment. And as we all know, April 30th of 2021 was the 100th year anniversary of the creation of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. We had asked our Director of Strategies, Communications, Alfred Doblin, to kind of shepherd through, again, no playbook, how we can kind of put this together and do justice to the 100 years. The board had a committee put together, and we kind of felt our way through and said, we need some help. So we asked Alfred to step up, along with Peter Simon and James Allen, and try to put together a program. And it was challenging as everything else in terms of the COVID and trying to string together all of the history. So Alfred, exceptionally well done. And I'm going to ask you the first question before you do a presentation. I know we have a lot of, we've gathered a lot of artifacts, and I think we have to, and blueprints and memorabilia going back, and people shared a lot of things with us. We have to find a place, at some place, to properly recognize, preserve, and at some point, let's have a future discussion with the executive director and everybody about how we honor those artifacts and pictures that tell 1,000 stories of the places that we have seen and this place's experience in 100 years. So, Alfred, please come up and take us through the last 100 years.
Can I ask to play a video?
On April 30th, 1921, leaders of forever changed the region, creating what was then called the Port of New York Authority. As far back as 1834, both states collaborated to manage the ports and waterways. But the 20th century evolution of sea and rail created a need for a new compact, which mapped the future of the organization that we still have today. Renamed in 1971, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has shaped the region, engineering, innovating, and building bridges and tunnels, re-envisioning airports and seaports, modernizing mass transit, and building the World Trade Center twice. For 100 years, the Port Authority has been part of life for New York and New Jersey. Funding provided by Sharon and John Corzine and Goldman Sachs. advancing sustainable economic growth and financial opportunity.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, if you're listening on your phone, Commissioners, Executive Director Cotton. The video you just viewed is the first of what will ultimately be 20 centennial minutes produced by PBS to mark the Port Authority's centennial year. These spots have been airing across the region in New York and New Jersey since the last week in April of this year and will run through April of 2022. In April 2019, the board established a Port Authority Centennial Subcommittee to oversee planning for the commemoration of this significant milestone. A primary focus in marking the Port Authority's centennial has been recognized throughout 100 years of moving the region through good and hard times. Port Authority people consistently got it done. There was a clear directive from the chairman, which had the full support of Vice Chairman Linford and the Executive Director, that we highlight the dedication of Port Authority workforce that has been the metaphorical foundation supporting all the Port Authority has built this past century, and tell some of their stories. Exhibits with the help of dozens upon dozens of colleagues who were simultaneously focused on keeping the region moving through a global pandemic. The Port Authority marked its centennial in 2021. As outlined to you last year, there were 3 categories: education, commemorative, and celebratory. The global pandemic challenged everyone working on the centennial to think out of the box. In-person activities were either reinvented for virtual audiences or created to coexist online, while also being experienced by a public moving through Port Authority facilities. Education. Working with the New York Historical Society, 2 pop-up exhibits were produced that focused on the agency's history and achievements. Currently, one exhibit is in the lobby of 4 World Trade Center, and the other exhibit, which had been in both the north and south wings of the Midtown bus terminal, is in the process of being moved to the concourse level of Journal Square. They will continue to travel across our facilities. The exhibit is also accessible online through the Centennial homepage on the Port Authority's website. Working with both the Rudin Center at NYU and the Voorhees Center at Rutgers, we held 4 symposia that looked at the agency's history and its future challenges. And I'll note that the last 2 of those, one just 2 weeks ago, the last 2 were also in-person events, small, but they were the first in-person events that NYU had done with the outside public and that Voorhees Blaustein did with the outside. Additionally, the Eno Center, based in DC, hosted a webinar on the Port Authority's unique history as a bi-state agency created by Congress. All of these programs are or will be archived online for viewing, and nearly 1,000 people watched the 5 in total live. We also worked with Photoville, New York City, and were part of its Fall Festival on Brooklyn Bridge Park, a park built on former Port Authority piers. The maritime photo exhibit on Pier 6 was viewed by the 400,000 people who attended the festival over a 10-week period. Working with Montclair State University, 7 video history interviews were conducted with former Port Authority leaders and employees, which can also be viewed online. To leadership's initial directive, these personal stories of Port Authority employees, some who began work as early as the 1960s, affirmed the belief that there is something unique about Port Authority employees who watched the World Trade Center as it was planned, as airports and facilities were expanded, evacuated the World Trade Center's North Tower in '93, and then again on 9/11 before the towers fell, later mourned lost colleagues, and then still showed up the next day to build anew. The history of the Port Authority is best told by the individuals who have lived its history, and I urge all of you to listen to these stories. Finally, working with Open House New York, Beth Rooney, Deputy Director of Ports, narrated a sold-out Circle Line boat tour of all our ports in August, And in October, many of our facilities in New York and in New Jersey welcome small groups of in-person guided tours at Newark Liberty International Airport, at the original administration building, the World Trade Center, the new LaGuardia Airport, and a walking tour of the George Washington Bridge to understand the Restore the George program. This was in addition to self-guided in-person and virtual tours at other facilities as part of Open House New York's annual weekend festival. Moving on to the commemorative category. Working with noted historian Anthony Robbins, we created a centennial book that focuses on the agency's legacy of the infrastructure and the creation and recreation of the World Trade Center campus. On April 30th of this year, we dedicated a centennial plaque. We dedicated a centennial plaque and committed a time capsule into stone in front of the Oculus. Employees across the agency assisted in identifying and providing items for inclusion in the time capsule. And as you can see, the soul of the Port Authority, the pipers, played. Additionally, we created a centennial commemorative coin that was given to each Port Authority employee. Celebratory, perhaps the most challenged by the inability to do much in person. Virtual celebratory events were held on April 30th, 2021. Interactive programs followed the in-person dedication at the Oculus and afforded thousands of employees and retirees the opportunity to participate in the Centennial Day. And in October, the Regional Plan Association hosted a dinner honoring the Port Authority on its centennial. The RPA dinner, held close to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, also recognized the sacrifices made by Port Authority employees on 9/11 and in the months and years that followed. Can you play the short video clip?
Two anniversaries, the Port Authority centennial and the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Very different from the psychological impact and spirituality, but 100% correlated to a recurring theme that has defined and framed the glorious and proud history of the Port Authority, that being the contributions and actions of Port Authority staff and people.
Today's employees and their predecessors, engineers, managers, architects, police officers, maintenance, mechanics, lawyers, finance staffers, planners, administrative assistants, too many to mention, have carried the agency forward every day for the last 100 years, and they will do so for the next 100. Without their efforts, none of the agency's accomplishments would have been possible. A special thank you to the Port Authority Police Department and to the leaders of the 23 unions that represent the majority of our workforce. And finally, but probably most importantly, there are many employees of the Port Authority here tonight who have joined us, and I'd like to ask them to stand for a round of applause.
Let us raise our glasses to acknowledge the authority's solemn duty of care and loyalty to all the people of this region whom we serve diligently on a daily and nightly basis.
We haven't had a single dissenting vote in 4 years. And to my fellow commissioners, thank you very much for bringing respect and collegiality back to the Port Authority. Thank you. And we talk about the employees, and that's what it's about. You talk to individuals, and it is like a religion and avocation. When you talk about the Port Authority, it is in your blood. Leland Valenti, where are you? 47 years with the Port Authority. Michael Messiah, 40 years with the Port Authority. Stand up. Alan Reese, stand up, 37 years. Huntley, 36 years. Steve Plate, 36 years. Jim Starace, 35 years. James Heitman, 35 years. Mary Lee Hannell, 34 years. Charlene DeGraff, 32. Jim McCoy, 31. Cheryl Yeckel, 40. Carla Bonaccio, 39. Are we missing anybody? Stand up. You are a role model for us and for the next generation. You don't come here, and as I was telling Governor Murphy, you don't come here and do 20 and 25 and get out. You are in this for life. And as long as Rick and I are here, I promise you we'll hold you to that. I stand here before you. I am absolutely humbled. I am absolutely blown away that I have this title called the Chair of the Port Authority, which it belongs to everybody in this room. It is yours. It is your families. It is absolutely for everybody in New York and New Jersey to share and be a part of. Thank you very much for making this ride an incredible ride. Thank you for this future, the promise. And to the Port Authority employees, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I understand why our executive director always says he never wants to follow the chairman speaking.
Two things. First of all, I look so fat in that, it drives me crazy. And I hyperventilate. And two, Rick looks like he's running for president. He looks like he's president. Looks magnificent. Great job with that, Alfred, really.
Well, the abundance of Centennial program is testament to the agency's workforce that volunteered to make it a success. But whether it was watching video histories, listening to academics discuss the agency's history, participating in tours, and visiting public exhibits marking our centennial, the narrative thread was the same. Port Authority employees got it done, are getting it done, and think of how to get it done in the future. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the people across the agency who worked with me these past many months, giving a shout out to Chase Palmer, a leadership fellow assigned to work with me on the Centennial. I know it's small print, but they're extraordinary people, and if we left someone out, I apologize. Finally, I would like to thank the chairman, Vice Chairman Linford, the board, and Rick for their support in marking this important milestone in the agency's history. Thank you very much.
Alfred, exceptionally well done. Thank you very much. You've done a great service, great justice to the 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
And in terms of the speakers program, we've received one written or two?
One written and one video.
Okay, one written, which will be filed with the board minutes, and we're going to watch the one video. And according to the notes that I have, the written and video do not relate to any of the items that are before our vote, our board vote today. Is that correct, Jim?
That is correct, Chairman.
Great. Can we see the one video?
Hi, my name is Victoria Fariello, and I'm a district leader in Lower Manhattan. And I'm here to ask that the board vote no on the resolution for 5 World Trade Center in its current form. As a member of a coalition for 100% affordable 5 World Trade Center, I realize that the proposed resolution right now binds the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation and the Port Authority to building guidelines that require a certain amount, that lack the flexibility that we would need in order to create to search for other alternatives so that we can create more affordability downtown. We have lost over 5,000 affordable units in Lower Manhattan since in the last 15 years, and we desperately need more. So I respectfully ask that the board vote no on the resolution for 5 World Trade Center. Thank you.
That's it, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now proceed with the voting of the items for the board's consideration. Each of the respective committee chairs will have a brief report before we have a roll call. We will have Commissioner Cohen start with the portion with the 2022 budget as chair of the Committee on Finance, and then vice chair, which I will now take his with regard to his report on capital planning, and then we'll finish up with a report on with the committees of operation, which I will present with Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Cohen.
Terrific, thank you. As Chair of the Committee on Finance, I will now recommend an item that authorizes the 2022 budget consistent with the parameters described by the Chief Financial Officer during her presentation on the 2022 budget. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the Corporate Secretary to note any Commissioner recusals on this matter.
There are no recusals.
Commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I now request a motion on this item.
So moved.
And can I have a second?
Second.
I now request that the Corporate Secretary call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Horowitz and Linford left a yes vote with me.
Will note the record accordingly.
As the votes are in order, the item is approved. Thank you. I turn it back to the Chair.
Thank you very much. Now pinch hitting for the Vice Chair. We're going to turn to the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, Asset Management. And there are two items. The first is authorizing a lease with JFK New Terminal 1, a private consortium composed of the Carlyle Group, Ulico, and Johnson. This lease provides for the phased development of the new state-of-the-art 2.4 million square foot passenger terminal at JFK. It represents $9.5 billion in private investment at JFK by the new leasee. The item also authorizes a short-term extension of the existing lease with the current terminal operator to ensure an efficient turnover to the new terminal operator. Prior to making the motion, I ask if there's any recusals.
There are no recusals.
Do I have any questions or comments? I know we have had several meetings, a lot of discussion. Any motion to move this item?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Horowitz and the Vice Chair left a yes vote on their way out. The next item, it carries. The next item authorizes a full $2.9 billion Port Authority commitment to the JFK redevelopment program consistent with the capital plan. This program will provide for the implementation of a series of Port Authority infrastructure projects that will enable the private investment in terminal developments, including Terminal 1. The proposed program authorization is inclusive of a certain previously authorized amount. Prior to making a motion, I ask if there's any recusals.
There are no recusals.
Any questions or comments? I know we've had extensive conversations and discussions about this. Any further publicly? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Horowitz and Vice Chair Linford will let the yes vote with me. Please note the record. Votes are in order. Item is approved. As Chair of the Committee on Operations, I'll now present a final item. This item authorizes a 2-year extension of an existing lease with the GAZ Realty at Newark Liberty International Airport in exchange for a $3 million investment by the tenant in improvements to its leasehold, which currently includes a service station and a convenience store. The improvements will include 2 dine-in and drive-through dining options and the installation of an electric vehicle charging stations. Prior to making a motion, I ask the Corporate Secretary, are there any recusals?
There are no recusals.
Any comments or questions from the commissioners? A motion, please.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Horowitz and Vice Chair Linford left a yes before they left.
Will note the record accordingly.
Thank you very much. Votes are in order. The item's approved. There being no further business, I move to adjourn, but let me just say, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Everyone had a Happy Hanukkah last week. Have a safe new year as we plot and plan, safe for 22. And we're looking forward to seeing everybody in the new year.
Same to you, Mr. Chairman.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Excellent.
Motion is
So moved.
by